It began like an ordinary weekend in Cologne, Germany. The city slept under a calm winter sky, unaware that beneath its streets, something extraordinary was unfolding. Deep underground, a small crew of men worked silently in the darkness, their hands covered in dust, their eyes focused, their plan flawless. They weren't there to break walls or steal cars. They were about to pull off one of the most brilliant bank robberies in history. No alarms went off. No guards were alerted. By the time anyone realized what had happened, it was already over. The vault of a major German bank had been emptied. Millions in cash, gold, and valuables gone without a trace. But the real shock came when police discovered how it had been done. A tunnel, stretching for meters beneath the earth, built with precision, reinforced with wood and lights, an engineering marvel executed by criminals. This wasn't chaos. It was genius. A crime that felt more like a work of art. Today, we uncover the unbelievable true story of Germany's most insane bank heist. A robbery so perfect, even investigators couldn't help but admire it. In January 2013, Germany woke up to headlines that sounded impossible. A bank in Cologne had been robbed, and not a single alarm had gone off. The thieves hadn't stormed in with weapons or masks. Instead, they had come from beneath, tunneling their way under the city like ghosts, vanishing into the night with millions in cash, gold, and precious stones. It wasn't just a crime. It was an engineering miracle. The target was the Kreissparkasse Bank, a well-guarded institution that stood at the heart of Cologne. What no one knew was that, just meters below the surface, a group of men had been working in secret for months. They had rented a nearby garage, pretending to run a small business, but in reality, they were digging their way toward fortune. Using professional tools, wooden supports, and electric lighting, they carved a tunnel nearly 100 feet long, directly into the bank's vault. When police arrived days later, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The tunnel was so perfectly constructed that even experts called it a masterpiece of criminal architecture. There were no fingerprints, no security footage, and no clue as to who the masterminds were. The heist shocked not just Germany, but the entire world. It was bold, brilliant, and terrifyingly well planned. In a country known for precision, this crime became the ultimate example of it, only this time in the service of theft. But who were these men? How did they manage to stay invisible for so long? And most importantly, where did they disappear after pulling off one of the most extraordinary robberies in modern history? This is the unbelievable true story of Germany's most insane bank heist, and the genius minds behind it. It all began months before the robbery, in the quiet industrial outskirts of Cologne. A small, unremarkable garage stood on a narrow street, surrounded by old warehouses and construction yards. To anyone passing by, it looked completely ordinary. Dusty windows, rusty locks, and a faint smell of oil. But inside, something extraordinary was happening. It was the secret headquarters of a heist that would soon make history. The plan was born out of patience and precision. The group behind it wasn't made up of reckless criminals. They were thinkers, planners, and builders. Each man had a specific skill. One was an engineer, another a carpenter, and one even had past experience in construction. Together, they formed the perfect team, silent, methodical, and obsessed with perfection. They started with research. Using stolen city blueprints and underground maps, the team studied the bank's location from every angle. They measured distances, studied soil types, and identified the safest path to reach the vault. Every step was planned with surgical accuracy. They even knew the thickness of the vault's concrete walls before they started digging. The group rented the garage under a fake name, paying in cash to avoid suspicion. They brought in supplies slowly, tools, beams, lighting equipment, making it look like a workshop project. Every night, they would dig for a few hours, moving the soil in bags and dumping it discreetly in nearby trash bins or construction sites. Noise was their biggest enemy, but they timed their digging around heavy traffic hours to mask the sound. The tunnel grew inch by inch. It wasn't just a hole in the ground, it was a fully structured passageway, supported with wooden frames, equipped with electric lights and even ventilation. It stretched nearly 100 feet underground, leading directly toward the bank's vault. The precision was so incredible that engineers later said it could have passed for professional work. The crew worked in complete silence. No phones, no digital records, no communication outside their circle. They trusted no one. When a new member was occasionally brought in to help, he was only shown a small part of the tunnel, never the full picture. Each worker was sworn to secrecy and paid in cash. As the tunnel neared completion, tension began to rise. One small mistake could ruin everything. A miscalculation, a gas leak, a noise complaint, and years of work would collapse overnight. But luck, or perhaps brilliance, stayed on their side. Despite all odds, the tunnel reached its destination right beneath the bank's main vault. They were now just inches away from millions in gold, jewelry, and cash. All that stood between them and fortune was a thick wall of reinforced concrete. For days, they studied how to break through it quietly. They used drills with noise dampeners, tested small areas, and reinforced the tunnel ceiling to prevent collapse during the final breakthrough. By early January, everything was ready. The air inside the tunnel was cold and heavy, but the men were focused. Every detail, from their tools to their escape route, was checked twice. There was no room for panic, no margin for error. What started as a dream was now real. Months of digging, planning, and secrecy were about to pay off. Standing in the dimly lit tunnel, the crew could almost hear the heartbeat of the city above them, unaware that beneath its feet, a masterpiece of crime was moments away from being completed. They had done the impossible. They had built an invisible road to the vault of one of Germany's most secure banks. The stage was set. The plan was flawless. All that remained was the final step, to break through the last wall and claim what they came for. The greatest bank heist in German history was no longer a plan on paper. It was alive, breathing, and just one night away from becoming reality. It was a cold, quiet weekend in January 2013, the kind of weekend when the streets of Cologne fall silent and the city rests. But beneath that calm surface, a secret operation was unfolding that would soon shake Germany to its core. Inside their hidden tunnel, the team of robbers prepared for what they had been building toward for months. Everything was ready: the tools, the timing, and the escape route. For the crew, this was not a night of chaos or panic. It was precision in motion. They worked like professionals, communicating through hand signals and whispers. The air was thick with tension, the only sound coming from the soft hum of their electric drills. They were standing just inches from the vault, the final barrier between them and millions in cash and valuables. The wall was thick, reinforced concrete, designed to withstand any attack. But these men had come prepared. They drilled through slowly, using sound-dampening techniques and taking short breaks to listen for any alarm or vibration. Hours passed, and then finally, a small crack appeared. The moment the first piece of concrete fell, a rush of excitement filled the tunnel. They had made it. When they broke through into the vault, the sight was breathtaking. Rows of safety deposit boxes glimmered in the dim light. It was a sea of locked treasures, gold, jewelry, and cash worth millions. The robbers moved fast but stayed calm. They opened boxes one by one, using specialized tools to avoid damaging the contents. Bags filled up quickly: money, gold bars, diamonds, and documents. Every movement was rehearsed, every action timed. Above ground, the city slept peacefully. No alarms went off. The bank's security system remained silent. Everything had been calculated so precisely that even the vibration sensors on the vault walls didn't react. The robbers were invisible, ghosts beneath the earth. After hours of work, the vault was stripped clean. The floor was littered with broken boxes and scattered dust. The men double-checked every bag, ensuring nothing valuable was left behind. Then, one by one, they disappeared back into the tunnel, sealing off their entrance as they went. Within minutes, the underground passage swallowed all traces of the heist. When morning came, the world above carried on as if nothing had happened. The employees of Kreisparkasse Bank arrived for another ordinary Monday. But when they unlocked the vault, what they saw was beyond comprehension. The steel door stood open. Safety boxes were torn apart, valuables missing. It looked like a scene from a Hollywood movie, only this wasn't fiction. Police were called immediately. Within hours, the building was surrounded by investigators, reporters, and stunned bystanders. No one could understand how anyone could reach the vault without setting off an alarm. That's when officers discovered a small round hole in the vault floor. As they traced it, their disbelief grew. The tunnel stretched almost 100 feet, perfectly built, complete with wooden beams, electrical lights, and even ventilation pipes. It was unlike anything the police had ever seen. News of the Cologne tunnel heist spread across Europe within hours. Media outlets called it the heist of the century. Experts compared it to legendary robberies like the Antwerp diamond heist or the Great Train robbery. But this was something different. Cleaner, smarter, more controlled. While police gathered evidence, the robbers were already miles away, blending into society as if nothing had happened. They had vanished. No fingerprints, no faces caught on camera, no witnesses. The vault was empty, and so were the investigators' hands. In just one night, a small team of men had defied technology, security, and logic itself. They had pulled off a robbery so silent and perfect that even the bank's own employees couldn't explain how it happened. The impossible had been done, and it left Germany both horrified and secretly impressed. It wasn't just a crime. It was a masterpiece. The aftermath of the Cologne bank heist was chaos. Within hours of the discovery, the quiet neighborhood around the Kreisparkasse Bank turned into a storm of flashing lights, police sirens, and media cameras. Investigators were in disbelief. How could a crime of this scale happen in the heart of one of Germany's most developed cities, without a single alarm, without a single clue? The first team to enter the vault described the scene as unreal. Safety deposit boxes were ripped open, piles of debris covered the floor, and in the center of it all, a hole, a dark opening leading down into the earth. As they shined their flashlights into the tunnel, what they saw left them speechless. Wooden beams lined the walls, electrical cables snaked across the ceiling, and ventilation pipes kept the air fresh. It wasn't the work of desperate thieves. It was the work of engineers. The tunnel stretched roughly 30 meters long, running from a rented garage to directly beneath the bank's vault. Police forensics began mapping every inch, collecting soil samples, fingerprints, and tool marks, but nothing useful turned up. Whoever built it had worn gloves, used disposable tools, and left no trace of their identity. Detectives began their investigation by focusing on the garage. Inside, they found leftover wood, plastic sheets, and food wrappers, the only real evidence that someone had been there. But even those items were wiped clean of DNA. The garage had been rented months earlier under a fake name. Payments were made in cash, and the ID used was fake. Next, investigators turned to nearby surveillance cameras. Dozens of cameras were reviewed: traffic lights, street corners, nearby shops. They found a few blurry frames of a van entering and leaving the area late at night, but the license plate had been removed. No witnesses had seen or heard anything suspicious. Even construction workers nearby claimed they never noticed any noise or movement. The police began to realize they were dealing with professionals, people who understood forensics, surveillance, and the psychology of investigation. It wasn't just luck. It was planning on a level that few criminals ever achieve. The tunnel itself became a global fascination. News networks from all over the world came to film it. Engineers and architects visited just to study its structure. It had been built with near-perfect precision, straight, solid, and expertly reinforced. It was a work of art, one officer admitted reluctantly. If these men had worked in construction legally, they'd be millionaires anyway. Investigators even brought in geological experts to analyze where the soil had gone. They calculated that more than 25 tons of earth must have been removed during the digging. Yet no one in the area noticed any truckloads of dirt leaving. The crew had somehow managed to dispose of everything without drawing attention, possibly mixing it with nearby construction waste or dumping it gradually in small quantities. Weeks turned into months, but the case remained cold. Leads came and went, an anonymous tip, a possible suspect, a stolen van. But every time, the trail went dead. It was as if the robbers had vanished from the face of the earth. The German public was torn between fear and fascination. The media labeled the robbers as the Tunnel Masters. Documentaries, talk shows, and even novels began to appear, romanticizing the crime as a symbol of intellect and rebellion against authority. Still, for law enforcement, the humiliation was deep. This wasn't a crime of violence or chaos. It was a quiet, intelligent challenge to the system, and the system had lost. By the end of 2013, investigators admitted what no one wanted to say out loud. There were no suspects, no arrests, and almost no evidence. Millions of euros were gone forever. The Cologne tunnel heist wasn't just a robbery. It was a ghost story written in concrete and soil. And as the case grew colder, one haunting truth began to emerge. Whoever pulled this off didn't just escape with money. They escaped with the blueprint for the perfect crime. For nearly 2 years after the Cologne tunnel heist, the case remained a mystery that haunted German investigators. Every file, every fingerprint, every clue led nowhere. The robbers had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only an empty vault and a perfectly built tunnel. But in 2015, a small mistake would finally begin to unravel the silence surrounding the most brilliant heist in German history. It began in a local bar, a simple conversation overheard by chance. A man, slightly drunk and full of pride, began boasting about the tunnel job in Cologne. He claimed to have worked on something big underground that had made him rich. Someone reported it to the police, and that small whisper reignited the investigation that had gone cold for years. Detectives reopened the case with renewed determination. They revisited the original evidence, re-examined the garage lease records, and began tracking down known offenders with backgrounds in construction, tunneling, and previous robberies. Slowly, a pattern started to emerge. Several names popped up that seemed connected through shared criminal histories and overlapping locations. The investigation led to a group of men spread across Germany and the Netherlands. Each had a background that, on its own, seemed innocent. A carpenter, an electrician, a miner, and even one man who had worked on underground utility projects. But together, their skills formed the perfect combination for the tunnel job. It was too perfect to be coincidence. One suspect, identified as a former miner from eastern Germany, had the knowledge to dig and reinforce tunnels. Another was an expert locksmith, known for his ability to open safes without damaging them. A third man had previously rented garages and warehouses under fake names, a detail that matched the method used in Cologne. The pieces were finally coming together. However, turning these suspicions into solid proof was almost impossible. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, and no video evidence. Even the tools found in the garage had been wiped clean. The tunnel itself, sealed and filled months after the robbery, could no longer provide new forensic material. The only hope was to catch someone making a mistake, talking too much, spending suspicious amounts of money, or trying to sell stolen goods. Authorities began surveillance on the suspected men. Wiretaps, hidden cameras, and financial monitoring went into play. Some of the suspects were cautious, but others grew reckless. One was caught bragging to an old associate about the big score that changed his life. That was enough for police to move in. In coordinated raids across several German cities, police arrested multiple suspects connected to the tunnel heist. It was one of the largest manhunts for a non-violent crime in years. When the men were questioned, most denied everything. One suspect laughed during interrogation, saying, "You can't prove a thing. That tunnel's long gone." He was right. The physical evidence was too weak to tie them directly to the scene. Some of the arrested men were released due to lack of proof, while others faced minor charges related to fraud or illegal possession of tools. The alleged mastermind, believed to be a former construction engineer, had disappeared entirely. Some claimed he fled to South America, others said he'd changed his identity and started a new life somewhere in Eastern Europe. Despite arrests, the full truth behind the heist was never revealed in court. Most of the stolen valuables were never recovered. Investigators estimated that more than 9 million euros worth of money, gold, and jewels remained missing. The media speculated that the loot had been quietly laundered through businesses or smuggled out of the country. Even with partial justice, the case left behind a haunting mystery. The robbers hadn't just stolen money, they had stolen pride from the system. Their silence, discipline, and precision turned them into legends. To this day, the Cologne tunnel heist remains an unsolved riddle. The masterminds may be gone, but their creation, that perfect, hand-built tunnel, still stands as a reminder that intelligence, when combined with crime, can become unstoppable. Years have passed since the Cologne tunnel heist, yet its echoes still linger in Germany's collective memory. The story has become more than a crime. It's now a legend, whispered in documentaries, crime forums, and police training seminars. It stands as a chilling reminder that even the most secure institutions can be outsmarted by patience, precision, and imagination. The legacy of the heist reshaped not only how Germany viewed crime, but how it prepared against it. Banks across the country began reevaluating their security systems, particularly those built on older foundations. Motion sensors were installed underground, structural integrity checks were made mandatory, and reinforced flooring became standard for vaults. What happened beneath Cologne forced an entire industry to think differently. But beyond the technology, the story fascinated people because it wasn't driven by violence. There were no gunfights, no hostages, no bloodshed. It was pure intellect against the system. These men didn't kick down doors. They dug under them. They didn't hack security software. They bypassed it with geometry, maps, and silence. That's what made them so dangerous, and so respected, even by those chasing them. To the public, the robbers became almost mythical, modern-day Robin Hoods, though they kept every cent for themselves. Some admired their ingenuity. Others condemned the arrogance of criminals who believed they could outthink the law. But either way, everyone agreed. They had executed something no one else had ever dared. For the investigators, the case remains unfinished business. Every few years, a new rumor surfaces. A luxury car bought in cash, a mysterious real estate deal, or an aging man bragging about the tunnel. But none of it leads anywhere solid. Most of the suspected members have vanished into quiet lives, possibly abroad, living under new identities. The stolen fortune, estimated at nearly 9 million euros, has never been found. Some officers believe the money was carefully divided and laundered through small European businesses, car shops, construction companies, and even cafes. Others insist it's buried somewhere, hidden in a place only the original crew knows. One theory even suggests the mastermind was never caught because he was already dead, killed by his own partners to keep the secret safe forever. The truth, however, remains buried, quite literally. When the tunnel was finally sealed, police described it as a monument to criminal genius. Journalists who visited it before it was closed off spoke of the eerie quiet. Wooden beams still intact, tools left behind, as if the crew had just stepped out for a break and never returned. It felt less like a crime scene and more like a time capsule. a frozen masterpiece of human ambition and greed. The Cologne heist changed everything. It blurred the line between construction and crime, between genius and immorality. It showed the world that intelligence, when combined with patience and purpose, can make even the impossible possible. And yet, the deeper message of the heist lies beyond the stolen gold and the missing criminals. It's about the human obsession with perfection, the need to prove that you can beat the system even for a moment. These men didn't just rob a bank, they challenged the limits of what crime could be. To this day, their tunnel lies sealed beneath Cologne, a silent monument to one of the most daring and intelligent crimes ever committed. Its builders may be gone, but their story remains alive, inspiring filmmakers, criminologists, and dreamers alike. They didn't just steal millions, they stole history. And somewhere, perhaps sitting quietly in a cafe or hidden behind a new name, one of them might still smile when he hears the words, "The most insane bank heist in German history."